All right, welcome back to Blue by 90. I'm Justin, joined by Tanner. Today it is December 11th, and Michigan has its new play caller. Hired Chip Lindsay from North Carolina yesterday. It was announced. So this is the guy that's going to have Bryce Underwood or a portal QB. Not quite sure exactly who who will be under center in 2025, but what are your first thoughts here, Tanner, as Michigan brings on a new offensive staff?
Yeah, I think when the news broke last night, I hadn't really looked too much into Lindsay. I think a lot of it was leaning towards Jason Candle, the head coach of Toledo, and that kind of faded. Joe Craddock, the offensive coordinator down at Tulane, that sort of faded. Dan Mullen's name was brought up. I don't know what he's looking to do. There was rumors he was in the mix for the North Carolina job. That looks like it's going to go to Bill Belichick.
Bill Belichick is coaching college football.
Can you imagine Matt Patricia recruiting
in the year 2024? I don't know what college football is anymore. I have no idea.
Yeah, so he comes from North Carolina. I think a lot of people were kind of freaking out. But as I was looking, some folks on 247 did a kind of in-depth look at the SP Plus history of the programs he had been with. I think when you look at North Carolina specifically, in 2023 with Drake May, I think they were 7th nationally in yards per game. They finished top 25 in SP Plus offensive ratings. This year, they finished 34th, which I actually think is kind of impressive because you lose Drake May. I think they replaced 4 offensive linemen for this past season, and their quarterback went down in week 1 against Minnesota, and they still finished top 35. So we're just looking for that level, right?
That would be obviously a lot, better than what we saw in 2024 here. I think it's hard to compare anything to 2024 because, I think you and I could be at quarterback and probably, again, no shade at our guy Davis, but
I think we could have been at offensive. You give me Madden play sheets.
Yeah.
I may be able to drum up something.
But I guess I think my first thought is this guy was not on the radar according to anybody, and so. I guess my gut reaction, I want to be positive about this and be excited because I do think that he has a good reputation. I just think that with having, essentially, I would imagine the last 3 months to think about this, right? Sharon Moore knew where things were going. The writing was on the wall. And you have the number 1 QB coming in. I would have thought that maybe you get a bigger name. And again, I don't know who that big name is, right? But that was just kind of my first reaction was it felt like, this is a guy that maybe could have been your second or third or fourth option instead of the first. So I don't know if that means Sharon, missed on a couple of guys. I have no idea. Or if this was his top guy. Right, top target. To your point, obviously he coached Drake May, and Drake May went as the 3rd pick in the draft, right? And even though the Patriots are a dumpster fire right now, he looks like he has not been the problem the entire time. That he has 0 weapons around him. So, looking at 35 points a game, almost 500 yards of offense in 2023, pretty damn good, but. I guess one of my concerns would be he's just had a lot of jobs. He has not had a long stint anywhere. And so that, it can mean that you're moving up all the time, right? That can be a good thing. It can also mean, somebody doesn't want you to stick around.
Yeah, if you look at his, over the last decade, plus, he's at Southern Miss and he moves up to Arizona State, and then he goes to Auburn with Gus Malzahn to join his staff in 2017. I actually think when you look at who he's worked under in Malzahn and then also Jeff Monken, who is the Ravens offensive coordinator, won national championships with Georgia as their offensive coordinator. I like the guys he's been under. And if you look, I mean, he takes a job at Troy. Troy, that was a dumpster fire, but being a coordinator is a lot different than being a head coach. Some guys just aren't cut out to be head coaches. And I don't think that really necessarily speaks to his ability to call an offense and to run an offense. But then he works his way back up from Central Florida, the UNC, and then obviously now to Michigan. So it sounds like he did really well in the interview process. I'm assuming that was, a lot of X's and O's. I've never been in an interview for a coordinator position, but I have to assume it's probably different than what we imagine an interview to normally be. It's probably a lot of just breaking things down, showing your plan of how you would use the talent that Michigan has coming in offensively. So I don't necessarily put too much into, he's had a lot of jobs. I mean, guys move around. They're trying to get to the top spot, top programs in college football. So that doesn't necessarily bother me. But I think what he did with North Carolina this past season after losing what they lost, pretty impressive to me. And also when he was with Auburn, they had, I think it's only happened 8 times. They had 3,000 passing yards, 3,000 rushing yards. He did that again running UCF's offense. Now Malzahn's got obviously a lot of input into that, but when he was with Gus Malzahn, very good offenses. So how much of that is him versus how much of that is Malzahn? He was obviously the offensive coordinator when Auburn won a national championship with Cam Newton. So we'll see, man. But I think it's going to be just improved. I mean, the bar is very low, right? So
also, fun fact, he was at Hoover High School back in 2007, which if you grew up at the time that I did, I was in high school then. It was the year after they hosted the show Two-A-Days, if you remember. That was an unbelievable show, I believe on MTV, right? I think. And yeah, unbelievable show down there. I mean, that was like, as a high school football player at the time, you were just like, I mean, that was Friday Night Lights essentially in real life.
Yeah.
So after he went there the year after that they filmed there, which, I mean, obviously that's a, funny thing, but Hoover High in general is just like a dynasty down in Alabama. So,
well, and what's crazy is Jeremy Pruitt was on that staff, not at the same time, but during the show, if you remember, Jeremy Pruitt was the defensive back coach and then the defensive coordinator, and then works his way all the way up to be the head coach of Tennessee. Kind of crazy, some of the talent that Hoover High School has put out, not just players but coaches. So, that's an interesting tidbit. I didn't know that. You're telling me now for the first time, Justin. But
breaking news.
It's very, very interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm kind of indifferent still at this point. It's tough to know what's going to happen.
I think to your point, and this is kind of where I'm at. I'm also indifferent. I'll wait and see. I don't think it's like this exciting name, right? That you're like, holy shit, you landed a home run guy that isn't going to be an automatic upgrade, right? I think it's, not great, not bad in any way. We'll wait and see. And I think the big thing that I would say that's probably, I mean, this is obviously a very, very important hire. And this is also Sharon Moore's first hire, right? Technically, well, not technically, because he hired Wake and those guys, but with the whole cycle, right? After a year, the one thing that Jim Harbaugh was so good at is he almost had like a 100% hit rate on hiring coordinators, right? So we'll see, how Sharon Moore's talent qualification is, right? And identification. So I think that, that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just saying, all right, we'll see how it goes. But what I was going to say is the other big piece of this is you got to fill out the roster, right? Yeah. Like it does. I mean, we learned, this is probably part of the Kirk Campbell thing too, with we had a lot of issues with Kirk Campbell this year. He literally didn't have anything to work with, right? Like, I mean, you're on your third quarterback. You have a very mid line at best. You have no, breakout wide receivers. So I think just as important or more important to hiring this offensive coordinator is hitting the portal really hard and getting guys in here who can be ready to compete for a Big Ten championship.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing a lot of movement. The portal's been open for less than 48 hours, I think, or maybe it opened on some point on Monday. I don't know the exact time, but you're seeing a lot of guys in the portal. Michigan's had some guys enter the portal. Tristan Bounds, Dominic Jadis, Andrew Gentry. So, they're going to have to find. We talked about this during the National Signing Day podcast. Like, I think I'm probably wanting more offensive linemen than I was before. I didn't necessarily expect Gentry to enter. Maybe Link kind of locked that job down. I thought he played a lot better at the end of the season. You definitely saw some improvement from him at the right tackle position. But Michigan also in 2024 signed some really, really good offensive linemen who are
I think
sophomore or freshmen. So
my take on so many Michigan offensive linemen, Jadis, Gentry, who else we got in there?
Bounds is in the portal.
So those guys are all older guys that I believe Sharon Moore went to this offseason, said, hey, I'm looking to add guys that are going to start for us. And so I think it was a probably pretty real conversation to say, hey, just to let you know, we'd love to have you here, but our plan is to go get guys that can be really good. And he learned that he can't settle for what he has in the room really quickly last year, right? This year. So I see that as a positive. I wish the best of luck to those guys in the portal, obviously. But I think it's more a side of Sharon Moore being aggressive and telling these guys, hey, listen, we're not going to settle for what we've got right now. We're going to try to replace you, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a conversation you have to have in this day and age. I mean, it's the amount of people that have entered the portal is astounding. I think I saw that after the first day last year, there was 500 players in the portal. I think after 8 hours, there was that many this year in the first day. So I don't know what the numbers are right now, but there's a boatload of talent out there, and it's just up to Michigan staff to identify who are we going to go after, who's going to come in and improve this offense and this defense, because Michigan's obviously losing a number of stars on the defense. Mason Graham has already entered the NFL draft. I assume Kenneth Grant will be soon. Obviously, Will Johnson's going to go. So you're going to need to find some star power on both sides of the ball in the portal. Where we don't need to see Michigan find anybody in the portal is at the kicker position, because Zavada, our boy, coming back. That's a big time, because I think he could have been, he might have been drafted in the same route as Moody was a couple of years ago. That's a pretty damn good contract coming in. Yeah. But for him to come back is huge for Michigan's chances to, just to be able to stay in tight games and make big kicks. I mean, they've lived off that over this last 4-year stretch. I mean, you go all the way back to 2021. Jake Moody hit 4 field goals against Nebraska to win the game. And obviously has hit a bunch of big field goals. Turner did, Zavada did. So, yeah, I think, don't have to worry about that. Going to probably want to go find a punter. Tommy Doman's
need to find a punter, but it is nice to not have to think about the kicker situation, because it is, I mean, you watch so many football games, college and NFL, both won and lost by kickers these days, right? And what Michigan in the past 4 years, they have won more games because of their kickers than lost, by a wide margin, right? So real quick before we get into, we'll talk about who Michigan has lost in the portal and who Michigan is looking at in the portal. A couple more things on Chip Lindsay. So Kerryon Johnson, if you remember him, Lions legend, loved him. That's like the biggest what if guy I feel like for the Lions, or one of, because he was a baller at Auburn, felt like he always should have been breaking out, and then injuries just never put it together.
Can we blame Matt Patricia for that somehow?
We shouldn't. Okay. And we should blame Matt Patricia for pretty much everything. So yes, the answer is yes. Okay. But he played for Chip Lindsay at Auburn. And so what he said this morning on Twitter, great guy, first and foremost, will bring good energy and put the players in position to succeed. The rest will be on the players. He will do his part. So that's a good testimonial, right? Good backing from a guy that you coached, that, we all know. the other thing I wanted to ask you about just is talking about like what type of offense Chip Lindsay is bringing to the table, because I saw some people talking about this and, probably have my own concerns. He definitely leans more on the air raid than he does the run. And that can be a good thing for Michigan because obviously, Michigan has, especially in 2024, leaned 90% on the run because we didn't have an air raid. But, what are your thoughts on, could it go too far to the air raid and Michigan lose its ground and pound identity?
I don't think so. I mean, I mentioned the stats. He had 2 offenses that he was the coordinator of that, had over 3,000 yards rushing and passing. I mean, if you look, and who knows who Michigan's going to get in the portal. I mean, obviously Jordan Marshall's going to be a sophomore. We're very excited about him. But I do think they need to get a portal running back. But Omarion Hampton for North Carolina has, over the last 2 years, run for over 1,500 yards at almost 6 yards a carry. Now, obviously, you're probably not playing as stout of defenses in the ACC as you are in the Big Ten. But, I mean, 15 touchdowns each of the last 2 years. Like, he also, I'm looking at this at his stats right now and kind of wishing Donovan might be back because, 38 catches this year, 29 catches last year. Looks like he likes to use the running backs in the past game. So, unfortunately, Donovan out of eligibility. That's probably, Donovan's best ability as a running back is running out of the backfield, catching the ball. For some reason, nobody decided to ever do that except for the one time against Maryland his freshman year. So, but I don't have any concerns about that. It sounds like he's going to kind of implement a power spread, which I think is a perfect mesh of what Michigan has been and what football looks like today. I mean, power spread really came to be popularized by Dan Mullen and Urban Meyer at Florida, right? So I think if because Bryce, I think, is perfect for that, right?
I was just gonna say, like, yes. Do you? Am I concerned about like getting away from Michigan's tough, gritty, ground and pound offense? Sure, I love that about Michigan, right? I have loved that about Michigan. That was what won us the national title. We, the way to beating Ohio State was running Hassan Haskins down your throat, and having him score 5 touchdowns, right? And that's how we beat 90% of teams this past, in this past 4 years, right? But you also have the number 1 quarterback in the nation coming in, and you have to account for that. So, I think the one gripe you could have about the last, about 2021 through 2023 was you had JJ McCarthy, and although you used him very strategically, you maybe didn't use him quite enough, right? And, it's hard to say that when you go 15-0. It's like, okay, well, we did what we needed to do to win 15 straight games. Pretty damn good, right? And so I'm not going to complain about that. But when you have a guy that is as game ready right now as Bryce Underwood is, I think you have to utilize him and you have to build an offense that works to his strengths, right? So that's kind of where I'm at, where like, are we going to, probably be more air raid than we have been in the past 4 years? Yes. Is that okay? Also, yes, because you've got a guy that can sling it, that can run. They're probably going to run read option with him because Bryce Underwood is fast as fuck. And you have 2 really good running backs, I think, in Jordan Marshall and Ben Hall. I mean, what I think then the biggest question is, like, again, to your point, in the portal, O-line and wide receivers, you've got to go get guys that can, be the weapons around him that he needs.
Yeah, I think, with the portal, I mean, you probably want to go get, I don't know, 3 receivers if it were me. I know you're bringing in some freshmen. Who knows who's going to be holdovers from this past year's team. Tyler Morris was, I think, the best receiver, and he's in the portal. Maybe Kendrick Bell can continue to develop. Maybe a guy that can play the slot. You got to go get receivers. You got to go get a portal quarterback unless you just want to rock with Bryce Underwood. I mean, that doesn't really work.
I'm really hoping that they just land Miller Moss and then we can be really comfortable with what we have.
Yeah, and then who's from USC going to join Moss? I mean, there's some rumors that there are guys that want to go play with him. So I think if you're able to get Miller Moss, I mean, he's visiting Missouri and Louisville. I don't know. It seemed like Michigan was kind of...
Eli's a dork, though. Eli Drinkowitz is a dork.
No, absolutely. That guy's the worst. Just cannot stand him. So, yeah, man, I think, for Michigan to be successful on offense in 2025, they're going to have to bring in a number of transfers. And thankfully, there's a lot of guys out there. We'll just see what Michigan's plans are in the portal. I don't think Michigan is going to overspend. They kind of know what the market value is of each position. Sean McGee talked about that. That's probably why they didn't end up getting Derek Meadows, the kid from Bishop Gorman. So I think they're going to have to be strategic with who they go and get. But any number of guys is going to just inject a ton of talent in this room at wide receiver and offensive line compared to last year, right? Yeah. So whatever they do is probably going to be an upgrade. Probably the same thing here with Chip Lindsay. Like, the bar's not very high. So, and if they can continue to, play well on defense, they're going to have to replace a number of starters. But if they can get, similar level of production from the defense, especially more so towards the later part of the year, then, this could be a team that can make the playoffs. But they got to find a number of playmakers, in my opinion, in the portal that are going to be able to let them do what they want to do offensively. Let Chip Lindsay do what he's good at, which I think is pretty balanced. Like, I'm excited about that. Like, I think he's fairly balanced. I mean, 1,500-yard rusher the last 2 years is really impressive. Like, Michigan, Blake Corum's done that, and then when's the last time they had that happen?
It's true. It's very true. And so I guess my question right now is, you're sitting with a number of guys from Michigan in the portal. Are you sad to see any of them go, just to be realistic and honest here? I mean, we can be sad in terms of, like, they're great kids at Michigan and they put in work. But in terms of looking at the future, is there anybody in the portal for Michigan that you're like, damn, I wish he'd be on our team next year?
Tyler Morris.
I'll list them off right now for you. I mean, you have Tyler Morris. He had 464 snaps last year, right? Obviously a huge contributor on offense. Dominic Giudice, 317 snaps. Andrew Gentry, 115. Tommy Delman, 26 snaps, obviously, is the punter. Then you've got Miles Pollard, Raheem Anderson, Tavier Dunlap, Tristan Bounds, Christian Boivin, Jaden Denigal, Cole Cabana, Logan Forbes, and Micah Pollard.
I think I'm always going to wonder why Raheem Anderson didn't get more playing time. I thought he always was moving people when he was in the game. But as far as just, like, sadness over pure production and projection to next year, not really. Maybe Gentry, just because, again, I remember this was pre-COVID, man. He was class of 2020, but it was, right before COVID. And I just remember watching his film, like, this kid's a mauler. He's a road grader. And it just never seemed to work out here. I mean, he was only here for, 3 years, but would have loved to have seen if he was able to, continue to develop. But also, he's probably 23 years old after the.
I agree with that. And I'm just like, yes, I would have loved to see him develop too. But if he couldn't beat out Evan Lake this year, then I don't know.
No, yeah, it's more about the idea of it, right? Like, you're in love with the idea of something rather than.
And same with Raheem though too. Raheem was at center, right? And we had a rotating center for the first half of the season, and he didn't get any shot. So obviously, Sherrell Moore and Grant Newsome are not seeing things from those guys that they needed to get reps, because it wasn't like they were playing behind somebody and never got the chance.
I mean, the only thing that I would say is last year, Trente, I thought, should have been the right tackle all year.
That's
right?
true.
So maybe
you don't know until you know.
Right? There's some sort of, just I don't know. I mean, they're obviously at practice and they know a hell of a lot more than we'll ever know. But sometimes you do question, like, well, I mean, I thought once Andrew Gentry got in there that the offensive line looked better, and then he got hurt. So it's like, what is the cause for that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that I don't know. I think we probably have blindly followed what Sherrell Moore has thought about offensive linemen and Grant Newsome, because they've obviously had unbelievable offensive lines, pre-2024. So, there are always going to be misses, right? So you just never know. All right, let's talk about some needs. We talked about QB. Is there anybody else other than Miller Moss that you're looking at thinking, would love to have him as a stopgap for Bryce Underwood.
There's a couple of guys. I think the quarterback from SMU, not Jennings, the one that got hurt, he has had a productive college career. He's got one more year. He just entered the portal. Honestly, kind of curious about Kurt Warner's son, who just entered the portal from Rice. I mean, he's a bit undersized, but that's like, hey, it's Kurt Warner's son. If anybody's ever defied the odds at quarterback, it was Kurt Warner. So that's just, I don't think Michigan would go that route. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, Caden Slater from Liberty is going to be in the portal. I think he's probably going to go somewhere where he's like guaranteed start and not have the greatest prospects ever pushing him. Right. That's one of the tough things I think with Bryce is he's going to push you. Like he is going to push for the job, whether it be week 1, week 4, week 8. At some point, it's going to click for him, and it's going to be hard to keep him off the field.
Well, to be honest, like the ideal situation for Michigan is that you have Miller Moss in the first 3 games. Let's say it's Miller Moss, whoever. You have a portal QB in the first 3 games, and then Bryce Underwood is so damn good that you have to start him because you can't keep him off the field, right? Like that is what you're hoping for. So you're telling a portal QB right now as you're trying to recruit him, hey, we want you for a year, but the reality is we're paying this kid a lot of money to come in and we want him to play. So that's where like I struggle even with thinking that Miller Moss will come. It's like, yeah, Miller Moss, has had an up and down career, but he's still pretty damn good and is probably looking to play in the NFL at some point, right? At least be a backup QB or make a roster. So yeah, I agree. I think I just want Michigan fans out there to not be like very disappointed if the portal QB that we get is not some super flashy guy, right? It is a placeholder essentially until Bryce is ready, is kind of where we're at. What about this guy, CJ Campbell from Florida Atlantic, running back? I know you mentioned that I feel comfortable with what we have at running back. I know you don't have any experience, so wouldn't be bad, obviously, to go get somebody that has experience. CJ Campbell Jr. from Florida Atlantic. He is the number 199th running back, but he is only 1 year of eligibility remaining. So he's got a ton of experience. He had 165 carries for 844 yards and 11 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, he's a 10th ranked running back in the portal, according to 247. I haven't had a chance to take a look at his film or anything, any highlights or anything like that, but I think you just kind of need a body, to be honest. Like you just need a guy there. We all have high hopes for Jordan Marshall, but I do think when you look at college football, a lot of these teams have gotten just, whether it be receiver or running back or tight ends, like skill position players through the portal that are making huge contributions to their team. So I think Michigan definitely needs to go and get at least one. I would just say one running back, whether it's Campbell or not. I just want to see somebody who's got some experience. I would say Amarion Hampton, but I think he's projected as a 2nd-round pick. So I think he's gone. But that would definitely be somebody, hey, call up Joe Lynn. Hey, this guy rushed for 1,500 yards back-to-back seasons. What can we do? So, yeah, I don't know who it'll be. I haven't had a chance to really look at it. I mean, the portal moves so fast, Justin, as you know. I mean,
Crazy.
It's hard to keep up. I mean, 247 has a thread on the portal entries, and you try to keep up with that, and there's just so many guys in there.
Shout out to Sean McGee, because I can't imagine the whiteboard in his office. I mean, he's got to have you could cover Schembechler Hall, like the entire field house with this.
Yeah, and you don't have the time either. Like when you talk about high school recruiting, you have 3 years to scout, to develop relationships, to bring guys in for visits. Like this is 4 weeks.
And mostly guys, like once you enter the portal, there are 1,000 teams calling, right? It's like,
right.
How do you even decide, all right, who we're going to really go after? And then I think this is where the portal recruiting is so hard, because like if you go all in on a guy and you miss, there isn't time to go find somebody else, right? Like it's the recruitment cycle's over. All right. How about wide receiver? I mean, is it Donovan McCulley or bust right now?
I mean, I feel like last year it was. This year, I don't know. He visits right after the Ohio State game on that Sunday, so about a week and a half ago, and I think he's taking more visits. I mean, at this point, like, I'm not going to be super bummed if he doesn't come, depending upon who Michigan's able to get otherwise.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a good player. He got hurt last year and then just never saw the field again. I mean, Cignetti's going with his boys, right? His JMU guys. So not necessarily shocking or surprising. I think a really solid football player. But I'm not going to cry or be upset if he goes elsewhere. Again, Michigan needs to go and find like at least one guy that you're like, oh, okay, like we're playing some ball. I think the tough thing for Michigan with receivers, they're probably gonna have to overpay just because you got and I saw someone make this comment.
Because it's like, hey, come play with Bryce Underwood.
Yeah, I think you do because you got to buck the trend of just not, which is unfortunate because I think CJ and Roman had really good careers, but it just seems like nobody cares about that. And it's what have you done for me lately? They're probably going to have to overpay at the receiver position just because it's not like, hey, you could tell a kid, hey, you're going to come in, put up, 70 catches for 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. I mean, there's really no previous success to back that up. So that kid's kind of taking a leap of faith. You got to compensate him for it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, to your point, I mean, even with JJ, obviously, it was like, you have a top 10 quarterback and you didn't use him, right? So I definitely agree. All right, how about the offensive line? I mean, I think, in my opinion, this is by far the most important position group that Michigan needs to reload. Again, we've said it multiple times on this podcast, said it over the years. This is how Michigan has won football games the past 3 years. Josh Thompson, Northwestern, I think is key. I know he's visiting MSU. I think Ohio State too. But I think he is, you saw it. I thought Josh Pre played really well for Michigan this year. You're looking for like a culture fit. A Northwestern offensive lineman is a perfect fit.
Well, and he's from Michigan, right?
Yeah.
He's from Fenton. So, he's from the state. He gets it. Pre was also from the state of Michigan. I saw someone say that they're friends with Thompson's family. And after Michigan beat Ohio State, his dad posted on Facebook, it's great to be a Michigan Wolverine. I don't know. I haven't confirmed that myself. But that's
if it's on the internet, if it's a rumor, it's true. So,
I mean, it's a weird thing to make a rumor up over. But if that's the case, then you have to feel pretty good. It seems like a kid who, I don't know what his original recruitment was like, but maybe just wants to be wine and dine. I don't blame him, right? And a lot of these guys get to do the process over, and now they're much bigger fish than they were coming out of high school because they developed, and coming out of high school at 17, 18 years old, you're not a finished product. Right. So a year or two later, you're coming out of the portal, and it's like, hey, I'm all Big Ten, I'm this, I'm that. You get to go enjoy that. You get some nice dinners. Like, I don't blame these guys.
And just in general now, like, waiting it out sometimes can up that number, right? You start taking visits and the number increases every single time, possibly. So especially it does if you're one of the top recruits. If you're not, then you can get passed over, right? But
some of these kids, I don't know where they're getting guidance from. You kind of screw yourself if you go in the portal and you're not as, you're not a take for a lot of big programs. You may end up having to go down a level. I mean, some of these guys get terrible advice, unfortunately, but that's the way of the world, I guess.
How about this guy? He is actually visiting Michigan today. We're recording this on Wednesday. Jordan White from Liberty, offensive lineman. He's from DeMatha, Hunter Dickinson's hometown.
Biff Poggi.
I feel like he's a 6'2", 300 guy. So he's not
center.
He's a center, yeah. So he's not some 6'7".
Is he on campus today?
He's on campus today.
Okay. Yeah, he's the third ranked offensive lineman in the portal at the moment, as of 10/23 on December 11th. So yeah, I think he's one of the bigger fishes in the portal, especially as far as offensive linemen go. I think with Michigan, they had so much success with Andrew Vastardis, with Olu, with Nugent. during that 3-year run. So this is such an important position for Michigan. Crippen, I thought, looked better throughout the season than Jadis did, but I think if you have a chance to go get a guy like this, you have to go get him, right? If you go get him, you get Thompson. That's your center. That's one of your guards. You see what if Gio continues to develop, and then you've got some younger guys waiting in the wings, right? For that left tackle spot, there'll be some competition at the right tackle. I mean, I'm sure they'll get at least one more, but if you could start with those two, that's a pretty damn good start on the offensive line, and I'd be pretty fired up about it.
I definitely agree. I have heard as well that Gio is getting attention from other schools. So I think he's a take, and I think that's a good thing for Michigan in the fact that he is a guy that can be a piece to your offense next year. I think you're looking at Blake Frazier and some of these younger guys to step up. Obviously, I don't know if Babalola will be ready in year one, but you've got a 5-star guy coming in.
Well, so. you have Sprague as well,
exactly,
who's from the same area as Babalola. Andrew Sprague, I think, is a guy that's built to be a left tackle. I don't know if redshirt freshman year is when he should be taking the field. We saw what happened with Evan Link, but I think he was a lot further along. He's a much higher rated recruit, and probably further more developed and bigger at that same point than Link was. Link's problem, I think, was just from his strength and his size. He needs to put on about 20 more pounds this offseason, which hopefully he can do, because I do think he can be a really good football player for Michigan. Yeah, they signed a big time class in 2024.
I mean, that's what, I know we're talking about the offensive line being so important and having to go get some portal guys, but at some point you have to rely on your huge class that you signed a year, 2 years ago, right? So you're looking to have those guys developed, at some point here. I know that Michigan, they love Blake Frazier, right? I know that. So, and I know they love Sprague. So, you're looking at, if you've got Sprague, Frazier, Gio, maybe Crippen's in there still. I don't know. I mean, if you can combine those guys with the guys like Jordan White and Josh Thompson, then, that's a really good offensive line, in my opinion. And then I think one of the bigger issues with Evan Link this year is he didn't have much help either, right? It's not like he was thrown into the fire, and it wasn't a great offensive line around him either. And it was a shuffling offensive line all year long. So I think Michigan's got a really good chance if they can even land one of those two guys that we just talked about to have a really good offensive line, which changes everything next year. Let's flip to the defense. Keyshawn Silver from Kentucky. He announced that he was down to 4 schools. I believe it was Michigan, Miami, Florida, and USC that he was targeting. He was a former 5-star, right? So this would be an awesome addition to the defensive line.
Yeah, I know he's looking to visit very soon, and Michigan is going to be a factor there. I definitely think you need to get a couple defensive linemen. I don't know who those guys will be. I think you'll probably get more clarity over the next couple of days and in the next week or so. A lot of these, and I wonder what will happen too after the first round of the playoffs as 4 teams are done for the year. Are guys going to start entering the portal from those programs? Just what do you think, man? I know we're concerned about position by position here, but I just, on a broader scale, I just feel like the calendar and the time frame for the portal absolutely stinks.
It's the worst.
I don't know how you rectify it, though, because ultimately they're college students that are needing to be in classes by early January. But to have the college national championship played in the middle of January, I don't know. We saw what happened with Michigan last year, and obviously they had a lot more variables because of Jim Harbaugh leaving and all the uncertainty around the program. But if you go to the national championship, you're kind of SOL on building for the next year. So I don't understand how we need to see
the national championship. You're nowadays, they're talking about 14 or 16 teams in the CFP next year, right? If you're playing deep into December, if you're playing a home game on December 20th, you aren't putting all of your chips towards the portal. right? You have Ohio State right now, to use them as an example, is trying to win a game at home against Tennessee. Now you have a recruiting staff that's obviously working on the portal, but these kids are trying to talk to the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator and the head coach. And, I know recruiting is a thing during the season, no matter what. Right. And so, coaches spend a lot of time with that, but like, honestly, Michigan has the advantage right now, right? They're not prepping for their bowl game. Let's be honest. They're going to lose almost all of their starters, in my opinion, to either opting out portal or, to the NFL. Right. So, they're focused right now on building for next year. Right. And there are 12 teams that can't do that. 12 of the top teams in the country, obviously. Right. So, the calendar, I don't know how you fix it either, but it is a shit show. I don't know, man. It's tough. The only other position I was going to mention too was corner. I wouldn't be shocked if Michigan loses a corner to the portal still.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I think regardless, let's be honest, they need to add guys, right? You're losing the number one corner in the nation. And it just didn't go that well this year. So I think you've got to add talent and depth there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I, there's a guy from Purdue, very interesting recruitment. Michigan was in it. He reclassified to 2024, originally a 2025 kid, reclassified, went to Purdue, Terry and Grant. Not sure why. Not sure why he went to Purdue. I mean, I guess in the
talk about a dumpster fire.
Phew, I mean, tough scenes over there in West Lafayette.
Yeah.
But I think he's a guy that Michigan was heavily involved in or involved with when he was a high school recruit. So, I don't know if he played more than 4 games, at least going to have 3 years of eligibility, and was a big time recruit. Again, sometimes these guys reclassifying, I get it from, NIL perspective, but like, wouldn't you want to continue to develop before you get to college so you could play your best ball in college?
Well, you can also, I understand, this is like the Brady Hart situation, right?
Right.
And it's like, yeah, if you can, make a couple $100,000, like, I'm not against that at all. That's
right.
A lot of money, right? But you're 16 years old, right? And so I don't know. I think that you can also maybe develop more in high school and go make more money once you are better and more built. And so I agree with you. I think that it's a classic situation of like kids thinking that they're ready and they're not, and they see money or they see, opportunity. And it's like, you know what, being in high school and being a kid for a little bit longer is not the worst thing.
No,
right?
No problem, man. Enjoy. Like, I understand these guys early enroll and get ready and it becomes a job, right? And you're trying to get to the NFL. So I totally get it. You're trying to create generational wealth beyond your wildest imaginations, right? Like, I totally get that. But also, it's okay to have fun and mess around with your friends and be a normal high school kid.
Actually, it's honestly great, right? Like, you need to do that to become a good human being and like to become a well-rounded kid. If you're just this recruit that only does football,
you can't be a robot.
You're not gonna be, you're not gonna enjoy life, honestly. So, all right, let's talk about hoops for a second. We can end the podcast on this.
Wait, I wanted to bring up. We tweeted about this, but I wanted to talk about the OHIO sportsmanship Act.
Yes.
Which was introduced by a state representative in Ohio. And it's a bill, so it's not a law yet. I don't think it'll pass either from the sounds of what other lawmakers in Ohio are saying. But it's just too funny not to share. So here is the proposed law. No person shall plant a flagpole with a flag attached to it in the center of the football field at Ohio Stadium of the Ohio State University on the day of a college football competition, whether before, during, or after the competition. Whoever violates this section is guilty of a felony of the 5th degree. A violation of this section is a strict liability offense, and there's a bunch of other legal jargon. What are we doing?
I think there are so many things I love about this, but the thing I love most is it's specifically for Ohio Stadium. Like, you have Cincinnati, you have the University of Ohio, you have Miami of Ohio. They could have said, like, in any football field on college football Saturday or something. This was like, we are so butthurt specifically at Ohio Stadium as Buckeyes that we're going to make it a felony if you do this.
This guy said, I don't give a fuck about Bowling Green. Like, it's crazy. Again, I saw there was another lawmaker who's like, yeah, it's got to go through and pass the amount of votes it needs. It's not going to happen.
It's honestly just the perception of it all, of just like, okay, if you were Ryan Day, I'm sure he had nothing to do with this, right? But
he's probably like, shut up, dude.
I would be like, you're not helping us right now. You are not helping the allegations that we are a soft football program, because this is the epitome of being soft, of we can't beat you. So this is literally the same thing as my dad's a frat kid. My dad's a lawyer. Do you know who my dad is? He'll sue you. That's literally the exact same thing, right? I mean, it is unbelievable.
Can we real quick on the portal? This was from last night. It got sent to our group chat. So it's a Miami fan says December's at the University of Miami, and it's just palm trees. Kind of sick. Not gonna lie. I would like Miami in December compared to whatever we're having here. Jair Hill tweeted, Jair Sugar Hill, follow me back. So maybe that's the guy we were, thinking that might,
maybe.
Look into that portal.
I'm not sure that Jair Hill is the smartest kid on the team. I'll be honest, I don't think he was academic all Big Ten. That's just all I'm gonna say.
Hey man, you know what though? He tackled in the game, and I appreciate him for. That's what we talk about. We're gonna get into basketball, but guys, they may not have a crazy legacy at the University of Michigan, but honestly, I'm gonna look back fondly on Jair Hill just because he tackled Jeremiah Smith. He didn't let him get out into the open field, and then Jeremiah Smith hit Lamar Morgan, and nothing happened. It was kind of crazy. What kind of question?
These are all facts. Yeah. I agree with you, though. They're like, we're going to watch the highlights of the 2024 Michigan-Ohio State game and be like, remember Jair Hill? Like,
remember Amir Hall?
Remember Amir Hall made like the play of his life out of nowhere, right? Like, it's going to...
Remember Wesley Walker had a PBU?
You're automatically a legend in that game. That's all it takes.
Yeah. So shout out to Jair Sugar Hill. That's just wild.
Gotta follow me back. Me back.
Basketball.
All right, hoops. And in the first half, I mean, people were tweeting like we're a Final Four lock, right? And we were playing unbelievable. I think we were up by 15 at one point, just dominating. Arkansas couldn't, make a shot. Michigan's defense was playing well. Will Cheddar came in and hit 3 threes in a row off the bench, like he's like a sharpshooting god. Which I fucking love Will Cheddar, by the way. Like, if there is a guy, I mean, obviously I love Danny Wolf too, and we can talk about him and Vlad in a second, but I mean, Will Cheddar to stick with Dusty, to stick through Juwan and the shit show that was 8-24 of that season, right? I mean, you gotta love this guy. He's the leader. He's the vocal guy that Jay Billis was talking about it last night. But, I think that you're looking at, like, he's the glue guy to this team. And if they're going to make a run come March, it's going to be because Will Cheddar willed them to it. Danny Wolf's going to carry them in terms of points, and Vlad will make a ton of plays, but you need Will Cheddar on this team to make it go.
Yeah, no, I think I said this after their win against Iowa. I think Cheddar should get more run. He obviously played very well last night. Had some, had a big first half. He had 13 points, and it was like in 3 minutes. It was absurd how well he played early in the game.
It was like a burst.
The disappointing thing, I think, so Michigan was up 36-22, and then I remember doing the math last night, and I texted to somebody. Arkansas went on a 40-16 run after that point.
Yeah, tough.
But Michigan goes down by 18. and they come back and they have a chance to tie it or win it at the buzzer. So they need to clean up the turnovers. They need to work. They missed 7 free throws, which, you lose by 2. Now Arkansas missed some free throws as well. But man, I just thought, I don't know. It felt like Arkansas also just wouldn't miss. It was annoying.
I mean, they went on that run in the second half where it was just like Wagner and whoever else they were just launching. And I thought that, like, for a minute there, we kind of lost our intensity, lost our grit and toughness, and Arkansas went on a run and they were like just bullying us, which happens to college kids, right? Like momentum, if all the momentum isn't real crowd is the dumbest crowd of people ever, because I think momentum's like one of the most important things in sports ever.
Look at the Michigan Ohio State game.
I mean, yeah, the Ohio State game is the perfect example of it. Last night's the perfect example of it, right? Of like a swing, right, where everything's going Arkansas's way, and it feels like, Michigan, even though they're like getting decent looks, like nothing can go, and then you just don't end up playing as hard when things aren't going your way.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, down the stretch, I mean, Danny Wolf and Vlad, it is a deadly duo. Danny Wolf is, unfortunately, I think, going to be one and done here. There's no way that he doesn't get.
He's a lottery pick at this point.
I mean, he's literally our point center. We are at our best sometimes when he brings the ball. That's what we were doing when the game was on the line at the end of the game.
So 2 things that I'd like to say about last night. So when Michigan's down 1 point, it's like 45 seconds left. Trey Donaldson, comes down. He drives to the baseline, steps out of bounds. Get Danny Wolf the ball. Just get him the ball.
I feel like you're overthinking that.
Let's just get him the ball. But the other thing is I think Danny needs to be a little bit more assertive. I think midway through the second half, he had like 4 points. He ended with like 12, I think. So he, started. But dude, those drives were there. Like when he's able to get downhill, he's a very good finisher at the rim. Or you create and get it to Vlad, right? Unfortunate. Vlad got that hook shot blocked. Like, just so many opportunities to win the game. Yeah. Beyond just playing better throughout the game, but like in that last 2 minutes, there were so many opportunities for Michigan. They just couldn't convert.
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point on Danny Wolf, like, not only is he going to create his own shot and get his, but people have to help on him. And so it's impossible, especially when you have him and Vlad on the floor. There are very few matchups, that defenses can guard that. So when he draws so much attention, it ends up that, Namari or Sam Walters or whoever, right, is open because of that. So that's honestly my main point of why you need to have Danny Wolf have the ball there, no matter what. I think in general too, looking at Trey, looking at Roddy Gale, Reuben Jones, Michigan has to have better guard play, man. It has to have better guard play, because right now it just feels like if Danny or Vlad or Cheddar doesn't have the ball, like, those guards are not making stuff happen. Yes, they are making shots at times, and sometimes they're the recipient of something, but it's because Danny Wolf or Vlad or somebody is making it go. And so right now you have to look at Trey Donaldson. It's like, hey man, we brought you in to make this thing go, right? And he, last night, I think the biggest issue I have with him was 3 assists and 4 turnovers, right? You cannot have a negative assist to turnover ratio as the point guard in a huge game like that. So we don't need Trey Donaldson to go for 15 points a game, right? He can have 7 points a game, but you have to go and make the game, make the plays work. You have to get the ball to your guys that can score. The other thing I was just going to say, I'm going to be honest, I've been pretty disappointed with Roddy Gale so far. I think when he comes in, he tries to make shit happen too much himself. And I just think that it's he needs to let the game come to him a little bit more. Probably the same with Reuben Jones.
Yeah. I know that, Michigan has tightened up the rotation quite a bit since the early parts of the season. You're seeing less guys get run in key moments of a game. I think Michigan needs to continue to do that. There were moments where I felt guys on the court were overwhelmed at times, especially during that big run at the end of the first half, going into the second half. So I think, obviously you want to get guys run because they're going to get better throughout the season. Or, you want as deep of a roster as possible going into, March and into the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournament. But I felt like Michigan maybe shot themselves in the foot with some of the guys that were in the game at points last night. I don't want to be mean, but like I don't need Reuben Jones taking like floaters or long twos or three. Like
100%.
it's not falling for you. And I don't know his game from North Texas enough to be able to say definitively that he shouldn't be shooting, but like it just feels like Trey Jackson at times with Reuben Jones. Like, is that too mean?
No, I think that's fair and accurate. Like Trey Jackson had times where you're just like, holy shit. Like he'd dribble drive and dunk, and you're like, okay, where has that been? And Reuben Jones has been the exact same thing of like, you can see that he's got it, right? And I bet you in practice, he shows that all the time. But then there's way too many times where it's like, all right, man, I like the drive, but if you don't have the shot, just kick it, right? Keep the ball moving around. So I don't know. I think my gut tells me right now there are so many guys in this rotation and so many guys involved that what is happening is all these guys, whenever they get their shot, they feel like they need to prove it to Dusty that they can be the guy and they deserve, 25 minutes a game, because right now there are a lot of guys getting 12 to 15, minutes a game. So that's kind of the vibe that I get. So I think that, I would like to see Dusty kind of, all right, we've seen who the guys are that need to contribute here in these first, 10 games or so. Let's restrict the minutes a little bit. Let's tighten up our lineup and go with the guys that can go. I mean, that I think we said it on here before. That's what John Beilein was so good at. He gave zero fucks and was just like, you know what? We got a 7-man roster that we're going with, 7-man rotation. And sorry, that's just how it goes. So yeah, I mean, still at the end of the day, you lose this game, it would have been awesome to win. I think that's a tournament Arkansas team. Coach Cal is Coach Cal still. He knows talent and knows how to coach. I'm still very excited at what Michigan is. Like, they've shown that they can play with the big boys on the big court. And so, I think that's still early in the year. It's December 11th, right? So, you want to be at your tip-top shape once you get into January and start playing consistent Big Ten games. And so you got about a month here to get things tied up. And I'm looking forward to it. So basketball's fun again, right? I'm excited. Basketball's fun to watch.
It gave you a heart attack, but it was fun last night. But I think the nice thing too about the way the schedule is now is that Michigan gets a week off. They had played, I think, 5 games in the last 2 weeks and 3 in the last week. So, that's tough on the legs. And, this is a team that's going to continue to get better. They've got a big matchup with Oklahoma in the Jumpman Classic. And then they play Purdue Fort Wayne, the Mastodons, which, fun fact, they accepted your boy into college.
Wow.
Purdue Fort Wayne. Wow. Shout out to the Mastodons.
Frame that acceptance letter.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't go there. Did not go there, but they said, hey, you could come on down. No, it's my mom's alma mater times 2. So
nice.
They used to be IPFW.
They used to be IPFW, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So my mom's, I don't know which one, but her undergrad was IU, and then her master's is Purdue. Kind of weird. Yeah. So interesting. Now they're just Purdue satellite campus. They're, I think, pretty solid. I think they're top 100 in Ken Pom. So that's not a cupcake necessarily. Michigan should win. I will be going to that game, actually. Looking forward to that. So yeah, nice for these guys to get a little bit of a break. Get those legs up under them and get ready for Big Ten play, man. Because hey, at the end of the day, they're 2-0 in the Big Ten. They're one of 3 teams that are 2-0, along with Michigan State and UCLA. So
you got to be really excited about the Dusty May era so far. Again, I'm trying to temper expectations. A lot of people want to be like, yeah, we're going to, win the Big Ten and in year one and go to the Final Four. Those things are really, really hard to do. Let's be honest with ourselves. But, with him able to just come in and establish culture, establish flow, right? His guys play hard. Obviously, there's a ton of talent on this roster to do that in year one. And I think he's got NIL figured out really well. Like, you have to be really excited about what the future holds for Michigan basketball. So I know we're a month in essentially, but really excited about this. So we'll have more come in this week. I'm sure, the portal is going to be heating up for Michigan football, Michigan basketball next week. Obviously, like you said, playing Oklahoma in the Jumpman Classic. So that'll be exciting. And we'll know more about Michigan's staff, right? As they brought on Chip Lindsay for the OC, I'm sure that there will be other moves being made as well. So for us, you can follow us at Blue by 90 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Blue by 90 Podcast on YouTube, and blueby90.com. We appreciate you. Go Blue.
Go Blue.